Welcome to the Prime Property Finance Podcast with Gareth Morgan and Mark Watts. This unique podcast will dive deep into all areas of property investing finance, going behind the scenes with property professionals, investors and clients. Between us, we have 35 plus years experience in property finance. The podcast has been launched to share knowledge, mindset requirements and experiences of successful investors and professionals. We aim to simplify many of the complicated areas of finance and investing and provide valuable and easy to implement tips. Keep an eye out for our new longer episodes every Tuesday and our shorter ones every Friday.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Prime Property Finance Podcast. My name is Mark and in today's episode, I would like to talk about solicitors. Now, we've spoken about solicitors quite a lot or pretty extensively in this podcast previously. We've done a deep dive into the lender solicitor, and we've also done a deep dive into your solicitor and the processes that they have to follow. However, one of the solicitors we haven't really spoken about that much is the seller solicitor, and that's the focus of today's episode. Solicitors make up a lion's share of the timeline that's involved. So when we quote sort of 8 to 12 weeks, probably 6 weeks of that sits with the solicitors, if not 8 weeks of that process. You can usually get an offer within 21 days, a month. The remainder of the time then is the legal process. Now, there are certain things that have to happen, which creates that timescale, and they look different in bridging as they do in mortgages and so on and so forth. However, one of the key things that slows down the process is the solicitor engagement. So as I say, we've spoken about how you can engage your solicitor and make sure they're as prepared as they can be to get that file to complete as quick as possible. However, there is also the seller solicitor that needs to be considered. Now, you obviously have significantly less influence over the seller solicitor as you would your own. So I've come up with 3 different ideas or 3 tips, if you like, where you can try and influence this as much as possible. So let's get straight into it then. Number 1, you can get the seller organised before the solicitors become a problem. So a lot of what gets blamed on the actual seller solicitor is something that the seller hasn't done themselves. And you may have experienced this where you go, and my solicitor hasn't come back to me. And then it transpires you haven't actually filled out the form, or you missed a form in one of the emails or something like that. So that point is very applicable to the seller also. So before or immediately after instructing, encourage the agent and the seller to make sure that the seller has completed the property information forms. That's usually quite a bottleneck. It's not a pleasant form to fill in if you're not a form filler, but it's just something that has to happen. Provide anything around planning permissions, building regulations, certificates, warranties, leases, guarantees, anything along that line that needs to be there. Make sure that is given by the seller to their solicitor. Have they dealt with their own ID and onboarding process, source of funds, all of that sort of stuff. So encouraging the seller to make sure that, if they want a fast completion, then they need to have bought into this process themselves, and they need also to engage in the same manner you will with your solicitor, with their own solicitor. Okay. And also make sure that they have relayed any unusual elements to the property if there are anything. That will often help their solicitor be prepared. A file that is well prepared is a file that has less friction with it, and the solicitor is far more likely to work on that file than the one that's constantly snagging to one side. You know what it's like individually as well, where things are just hard work. You tend to push that to the bottom of the pile and you get on with the easy stuff. So just make that file as easy as you possibly can. You can't make the seller solicitor work faster, but you can help them make sure they're not waiting for the seller. Okay, so is the seller solicitor automatically in possession of everything they'll need to complete within that timescale? That is so, so important. And as I say, if the solicitor has everything they have to hand, it's significantly easier for them to move that case forward quickly and with as little friction as possible. Okay, so number 2, use the estate agent as your route into the seller solicitor. Okay, probably one of the most practical tips, because usually what will happen is your solicitor communicates with a solicitor, and that ultimately becomes send an email, wait, chase, email, wait, chase, email, wait, response, questions. And all of those add days to the process. So an email sent today may not get answered for maybe tomorrow, maybe even the day after, or maybe even a week. And all the while, everybody's just sitting around waiting for that response. Then another email chaser. We often hear this all the while. Why haven't they picked up the phone? Solicitors do rely on email because there's a very clear audit trail and responses. So that if something goes wrong, there's recourse there. So they do rely on emails quite a lot. So be the one that makes sure that that isn't the case. So you can leverage the estate agent in this instance if you're buying it via an estate agent. So rather than can you chase the solicitor, I'd encourage you to be specific. So something along the lines of, our solicitor raised inquiries 8 days ago, 3 remaining outstanding and 1 preventing the lender solicitor from signing off. Can you speak to the seller today and ask them to contact their solicitor about those specific points? Okay, now you get the pressure then coming from 2 legitimate sources. One is the seller and one is also the agent. Okay, so that's something that's worth noting there as well. Don't just chase, ultimately understand where the blockage exists. And there's a massive difference between activity and progress. You don't want to be a busy fool. You just want to get straight to the root cause of the problem and deal with that and then move it on. Okay? Number 3, so give everyone a reason to care about the completion date. As I say, solicitors are busy. Your own solicitor is really busy. The lender solicitor is really busy. The file is just another file that is on the desk of a number of other files. Okay, so we need to give everybody a reason to care about the completion date. So what I would suggest is creating a shared completion objective as early as possible. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is if you need completion by the 28th, do not wait until the 25th to tell everybody you want to complete on the 28th. Okay? Get the buyer, the seller, both solicitors, broker and agent working together at the same date. Okay? And explain why the date matters. So for example, if you're on a bridging facility, our offer expires on the 30th. Therefore, we have to get this completed by the 30th, or the lender requires 5 working days to release the funds. So we need legal sign-off by the 23rd to achieve the agreed completion date. Again, that's very, very more specific. That's way more powerful than can everyone complete ASAP. ASAP is as soon as possible. What's possible for me may be not possible for you, and so on and so forth. So once you've agreed the completion date, you can then start to work backwards from that. So completion is on Friday. We need the funds requested by the Wednesday, the lender's conditions satisfied by the Monday. That means our outstanding inquiries need to be resolved by the previous Thursday. And then all of a sudden, you've turned an ASAP or a projected completion into a roadmap and a timescale and a timetable. Okay, so that some things like that will make sure that it brings to life what the actual completion date is rather than, as soon as possible. Well, to be fair to the solicitors, they've got a caseload to manage, and what's possible for them may not be the same as what's possible for you. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Can you make your completion date into a timetable of events that need to happen by fixed dates? That will help focus everybody's mind in the process. Okay. So just to sum that up then, a property transaction is a chain of dependencies, not a collection of independent jobs. Okay, you can have your mortgage offer. We could have done everything our side. The lender solicitor could be satisfied. The seller, however, if the seller solicitor hasn't come back with one of the queries, then nobody ultimately completes. Okay, and particularly with bridging, development purchases or transactions with expensive deadlines, that delay can have a real financial cost as well. So just remember, you can't control the seller solicitors because they're not acting for you, but you can influence the process around them. Get the seller prepared, use the agent intelligently, and give everybody a clear completion timetable. But above all, don't just ask what's outstanding, what's stopping us to complete. What you need to do is to ultimately get to the root cause to get that resolved. Okay, that's today's episode. Hope you found that useful. A few practical tips there that you can apply, as I say, because very often we ignore the fact that the seller's also got a solicitor that is involved in the process as well. Hope you find that useful. And if you need any help with any of this, by all means, get in touch. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you have learned something and have some tips to take away. We'd be very grateful if you enjoyed the show. You could give us a review and share with anyone that you know that may be interested. And of course, subscribe to the show so you can get notified when a new episode is released. If you'd like us to answer any questions or go deeper on a specific topic, please drop us a message at primeproperty.finance. See you on the next episode.